So I would say 6 months prior to that is where it really began, but I didn't know what was beginning. And I remember them doing checks after checks and they're testing, and little did I know they thought I had cancer. I was probably bleeding from my rectum about 25 to 30 times in a day. Often I didn't make it to the toilet. Often I would just bleed in the bed. I had no bowel control. And I remember it, he literally looked at me square in the eye and was like, "It's fatal, Farah." And I was like, "So I could die?" And he said, "We would do our best to try and save you, but it is a possibility." I remember, like, I looked around and I was just like, what's going on? Like, how did I get here? Like, I was fine. I was like, a couple months ago, you know, there was nothing wrong with me, and I'm like, now I've got these 5 doctors standing in front of me, I've got no one around me, and they're basically telling me that I could die. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Taheris channel. So today you can see it is obviously just me. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about my personal journey and my personal story and the things that I've been through, and it's going to be quite graphic. You know, I will be sharing an image or two with you guys as well, the ugly truth really of the matter, and I don't want to lie to anyone, and I don't want to, you know, this is not about Instagram beauty bloggers, or this is not, it's not a pretty sight, but it's the reality, it's the truth, it's the world we live in, and I want to share my story. And if it touches one person, then I've done my job. I want people to understand that they're not alone when they go through things. I know on social media especially, we get really caught up in what the idea of beautiful is, and that's a slim waist and a big bum and big lips and all these things. Yeah, they might be great, but they do not define us as human beings. And I really want to get my message across. You know, I think I'm a great example of somebody who fucking life just slapped them in the face. I think that's the only way I can put it. I mean, you know, I lived in fairyland, and I thought, you know, there was fucking princesses and princes and all this sort of shit, and it just doesn't exist. And you know, it's hard, it's life, it's a test, and all of these things. And you know, I've been there. I've been at the darkest of the dark. So I think, yeah, I think I wanna talk about it. First, I'm gonna start with before my diagnosis, and I'm going to break it up in segments. I don't want it to be a crazy long video, but I don't want to miss anything out, so apologies if this is a crazy long video. It all started in 2016, April. So I would say 6 months prior to that is where it really began, but I didn't know what was beginning. So it started in university, and it all started with my stomach making really funny noises, and just, you know, just being weird. But you always kind of put it down to, oh, I'm having a bad day, or oh, I haven't eaten properly today, or my stomach's acting up. You know, you never really think anything. When I was drinking Red Bulls, I was doing so much, so I was just like, you know, this is just life. And I remember having really smelly farts as well, but again, I put it down to the shitty food or whatever, and you know, made a joke about it, whatever, and I never really thought anything of it. I remember going to Morocco within that time, and I remember having really loose poo, to put it bluntly, and diarrhea, that's bluntly. And again, I put it down to the fact I was in Morocco, and if anyone's Moroccan who goes to Morocco, you always get an upset stomach, and they always say to you, oh, it's because the food is fresh, or oh, it's because it's changed, and your body's used to that processed stuff in London, oh, that's why. So again, that happened, and when I got back to London, everything sort of went back to normal, and this went on for about 6 months. And I was going to my best friend's show. She was finishing uni. I remember this was the day that it all changed, and I remember in the morning, I found a bit of blood in my poo, and I was a bit like, okay, that's not right. But again, I didn't really think anything of it, and I think this is one of the wonders of the world, because I'm the biggest hypochondriac in the world. If I've got a headache, I'll be like, oh my god, I'm dying. Like, I'm the most dramatic person in the world, yeah. And this, for some reason, just went over me, and it's Allah. Like, Allah put me in this position, and you know, if something is right in front of you and he doesn't want you to see it, you're never going to see it. And if it's 100,000 miles away and that thought pops into your head, it's God. And I truly believe that, and I didn't think anything of it. And I called the GP in the morning, and I basically said to them, you know, I found blood in my stool. Basically said to them, you know, is this normal? Is this right? They were like, oh, I mean, get a stool sample for us, and yeah, we'll test it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I remember I remember getting the sample, and I had the sample in my bag all day. I remember because I had to go out from the doctors, and I remember I was walking around, and I got back quite late that night. I think I got back at like 12 o'clock. And I remember walking in, and my mum was still awake, and I remember she was on FaceTime. And I walked in, and I was like, "Hey, mum," and she was like, "Hey, did you go to the doctors today about your bad stomach?" And I was like, "Yeah, I went to the doctor." I was like, "I got a stool sample, but I didn't manage to drop it off." And I was like, "Oh, I've got it here." She was like, "Oh, let me have a look at it." And I was like, "Okay," not thinking anything of it again. I was really tired. I remember I was super tired. I was like, "Okay," so I showed her it, and it was like, by that point, it was like it looked like blood. And my mum was like to me, "We're going to the hospital right now." And I was like, "No, we'll wait till the morning." And she was like, "You better get your fucking ass to that hospital right now." And I remember I got to the hospital, and again, I still wasn't like, in my mind, it wasn't anything yet. And I remember getting to the hospital, and I was just kicking my feet. I was like, "Why am I here, man?" I was like, "Go in the morning, it's not that important." And I remember going in, and I remember they fast tracked me when I told them the issue that I had. That was kind of like a little light bulb moment for me. I was a bit like, okay, that's not right. Usually you're in A&E for hours. And I remember going in, and I remember the woman, first thing they do when you tell them you're bleeding from your bum is they want to check for hemorrhoids. So she put on this nice little latex glove and violated my asshole. And I remember crying, because you know, that's no one had ever been there, and I'm like, oh my god, like someone's shoving their fucking finger up my ass, like fucking hell. And it all just kind of like just happened really quickly, and I was just like, what is going on here? She was like, "No, you don't have hemorrhoids." She was like, "How long has this been going on for?" And I obviously started explaining it. She was like, "And you haven't been here sooner?" And I was like, well, no one really comes to the fucking A&E because they either have been farting or having shitty shit, you know. You fucking send people away and give them paracetamol for that. So yeah, no, I didn't. I remember this is what she said to me. She was like, "It's a good thing you're here." She was like, "This could have been fatal if you left it a few more days." And I was like, fatal? I was like, really? I don't feel anything, like I feel fine. And then I remember saying to the woman, "So can I go home?" And she looked at me, and she was like, she almost laughed, and she was like, "Honey, you're not going home tonight." They admitted me into hospital, and again, like, it still hasn't hit me, like mentally it hasn't touched me. I don't remember much that night. I remember then waking up in hospital, and I remember them doing checks after checks, and they're testing, and little did I know they thought I had cancer. And it hadn't touched me. Like I remember telling other people around me, "Calm down, it's nothing, like relax, like why are you all," like my mum was like hyperventilating, you know, my dad was like on a flight back from Saudi Arabia at the time, like he literally automatically was like, "Boom, I'm coming home." And everything just started like, yeah, and I was like, "Guys, like relax," like, but I don't think I saw the severity of it. I think when you're bleeding out of your bumhole and it's like fresh blood, they automatically think you have bowel cancer. So I think initially that's what they started testing for, and I didn't really know, I wasn't really in the loop. I remember the doctors walking in, and I remember them saying, "We think you have ulcerative colitis / Crohn's disease." And I was like, what? Like, what even is that really? Like, I knew my brother's best friend had it, but I never really divulged deep into it. My brother never really explained it that much to me. And I remember hearing of it, but I was just like, what is that? And you know, they explained to me it's an autoimmune disease, and it's where you bleed from your bowels. Crohn's and ulcerative colitis are really similar. So the difference between Crohn's and ulcerative colitis is one part of your whole bowel system, so from your esophagus to your rectum, one part of that area is infected with inflammation. With Crohn's disease, you can have it from your esophagus to your rectum, and you could have like blood spots everywhere, where that shows inflammation, where your immune system is essentially attacking itself. So that's why, for example, ulcerative colitis, they could technically heal you by cutting out the piece that is inflamed, giving you an ileostomy bag for however long, and then reattaching it once it's all better, and then you sort of don't have that anymore. Whereas with Crohn's, they couldn't cut the area out because it can just grow in different patches, so your stomach, large intestine, small intestine, bowels, all that sort of area, just to sort of give you a bit of context as to the difference between Crohn's and colitis. But yeah, so they didn't really know at the time, and they said, "Oh yeah, you know, we need to give you a colonoscopy." I was like, great. Colonoscopy, I would say, is one of the most invasive procedures I've ever had in my entire life. I hate them till now. Just to put it bluntly, I've had about 15. Probably more, to be honest. I think I had like 5 or 6 just when I was in hospital the first time, probably 7 or 8 when I went back in. So yeah, they're not nice. They're really invasive. I cry a lot after them because, again, it's that feeling of invasion, isn't it? And someone invading your personal space, and you're awake and nothing you can do about it, but you want someone to help you, so you have to do it. So I remember in hospital, I remember probably, in terms of how severe my case got, I was probably bleeding from my rectum about 25 to 30 times in a day. So that's like bleeding and poo at the same time. Often I didn't make it to the toilet. Often I would just bleed in the bed. I had no bowel control at all, so I would just leak in the bed and they just have to come and change the sheets. This would happen probably 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. And I remember I always used to apologise, and the nurses were so lovely to me. They'd be like, no, don't be silly. It was so sweet to me. Once they diagnosed me, they basically said to me, you have ulcerative colitis, this is the way we're going to manage it, we're going to put you on steroids, we're going to wean you off the steroids, and then hopefully the medication should start to kick in, and then this is your lifelong illness, here are some meds for the rest of your life. That's pretty much the way it works. It's a really big grey area, and the reason why it's a grey area is because, 1, they don't know how to cure it, and 2, they don't know what causes it. Therefore they can give you all of these medications, but essentially they're just there to stop the disease from being active. So I will always have ulcerative colitis. It's just, at the moment, thank God, alhamdulillah, I'm in remission, and that basically means that the ulcerative colitis, although it is there, it's not active. Therefore I don't have the symptoms of ulcerative colitis. I feel just like how I felt before I got diagnosed with it, but there is always a chance it could come back. And although saying that sounds scary, I'm kind of over it because I've been through so much with it, and if it comes back, it comes back. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's like saying, you know, am I going to walk outside because people get hit by cars every day? Fuck it, until it comes back, it's not back. That's literally the way I look at that situation. Back to me being in hospital, I remember I was there for 8 days the first time. This was in April. The great thing about all the medication they gave me is that I had never been on any of these medications before, so my body was really responsive to the steroids. Now, the problem with steroids is the longer you take them for, the more your body builds up a resistance to these steroids. Therefore, they need to give you stronger steroids and stronger steroids and stronger. And, you know, the effects of the steroids, you know, it's weakened my bones. There are loads of things that have happened along the way that are a cause from the steroids, and I will get into that. So first time I went into hospital, 8 days. By the 8th day, I actually stopped bleeding, which was great, but I was huge and it wasn't a pretty sight. And do you know what, I'm actually going to share an image with you guys because I think I need to show you sort of where I was at and what I looked like as a person. So I'm just gonna get it up now, and as you guys can see, this is the image. And I mean, I look at it and I don't recognize myself. I mean, to some people they might just think, oh, you just look a little bit swollen, but for me, for what I know for my face to look like and what I know, my lips, my nose, my shoulders were swollen, my eyes were swollen. I could bet that was probably the most I could actually open my eyes. And I know I'm a squinter, but there's no definition on my face, you know, my cheeks, everything. I mean, I couldn't even wear a bag on my shoulder because I had so much water in my shoulder, because that's what steroids does. It has a lot of water retention. So I essentially couldn't put a bag on my shoulder because it would leave like a massive indent and it'd be really painful for me. Just to sort of show you guys, like, you know, what that does and the effects of steroids. You know, that they're horrible, and I don't mind showing this to the world because this is an illness, and I have no shame in telling people and showing people what I looked like. That was me, and if you couldn't accept me the way I was then I wouldn't have let you accept me for who I am now. And I think, again, Cameron is a really strong advocate for that position, because every single day he told me I looked beautiful when I knew I didn't. Every single day he came to see me, and every single day he looked at me and he told me it was going to be okay. And I think I never did think it, but when someone's saying it to you and they're giving you the strength, and I can actually feel myself like welling up a little bit here. And I didn't think this would be the part that I'd well up at, I'll be honest with you, but it's happening. But I think when like, I always assumed that Cameron liked me for the way I looked, I never assumed, like, although we had a great bond, it was always very, the chemistry was always based on desire and lust, and that most of the times comes from the way I look. And I assumed when I got sick, you know, that just wouldn't be the case anymore. And I thought, why would someone hang around and want to pick me up off the floor? And he's picked me up off the floor a few times, actually. And it was a really, really fucking hard time. And I just remember every time he came in, he'd be smiling and he'd be like, you look so beautiful. And I knew I didn't. And he never made me, like, he never ever made me feel like shit. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have one of the closest bonds, is because it goes so much deeper than just lust and desire. And yeah, we love each other and we find each other hot and stuff like that, but fucking hell, man, it goes so much deeper, so much deeper. When someone is fucking watching you bleed and they're helping you and they're telling you it's going to be okay, and they don't leave your side. And I had so many friends disappear on me. I had so many people disappear on me who I thought were my friends, and you know, and I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't that it girl. And it hit me that fucking people just want you when you're a good time. They don't care about you when you're on the floor and you're fucking crying. That's not appealing to them. They can't Snapchat story that. They can't Instagram that. I even fucking did have a friend fucking Instagram my hand and, oh, please get better, well, get better soon or something. And I was just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, and I just think to myself, these are not the kind of people you want in your life, you know. So that is the first time I was in hospital. And I remember I got home, and after 8 days, and I had a medication about this big, a box just filled with medication. And that's when it hit me, when I got home. And I didn't have nurses running around me or anyone running around me, or I didn't have all this confusion. And I remember just sitting there and I was like, shit. I remember just, yeah, I literally just looked around my room. I remember I was on my own, I looked around my room and I just went, thanks God. And I was so bitter, so bitter. I was like, why the fuck me? And there is so many phases you go through as a person when something happens to you. You think, there are so many fucking people in the world, why me? You think, what have I done to deserve this? You think there are so many bad people out there, but they're getting on with their lives and they're doing what they want to do, and you want to come and do this to me. But little have I learned that is just not the way to look at situations. And you know, I always say to people, and I say to so many people who necessarily might be sick, might be ill, might be this, but there is someone right now taking their last breath. Right now, there is someone in this world who is losing somebody. Like, until you're in those moments and you want to crumble, you have every right to crumble. But if you're still breathing and you're still getting on with your life, and you know, someone tells you you've got to take a few tablets for the rest of your life, even if you lose a fucking hand or an arm, like, I'm sorry, I know I haven't been there, but you know, I think I'm safe to say that, you know, I know what it's like to be at your lowest of your low. I know it's easy to crumble. I crumbled throughout a lot of what happened to me. I never ever once had suicidal thoughts though, never. And the reason why I never had suicidal thoughts was because I believed in God. And I can genuinely tell you that that was probably the very thin line between me calling it a day, because I was in pain a lot. I was in pain for weeks and months and years. So I know what it feels like to just want to just call it a motherfucking day. I remember, like, I've prayed to God, I've prayed to him and I've said, don't wake me up tomorrow. Like, I'm trying to put the power in his hands. Like, please stop me from breathing. I can't do it myself. I know you won't let me do that, so do it for me. Just let me go peacefully. I used to look around and be like, why the fuck am I still here? Sometimes you just gotta look at the bright side of life. So, like I said, pumped with a whole load of steroids. 2 months later, I would say, soon as I finished my steroids, because what happens is they give you steroids for 8 weeks, but you wean them down. So you start off with 8 tablets, then 7, then 6, then 5, then 4, then 3. You get the picture. And you will have to wean off steroids. You cannot just abruptly stop taking steroids, because they suppress your immune system and they work in favor of your immune system. So you can't just automatically go from one to the other. You've slowly got to make that transition where the steroids sort of go down and your immune system starts to kick in. So essentially, that's what we thought was going to happen, but that did not happen. So 1 week after not taking the steroids, so I had completed my 8 weeks of steroids, 1 week later, I went straight back into hospital. My immune system did not kick in. And I remember I packed my bag this time. It was so different. I was like, Mum, wakey time. She was like, what is it? I was like, I'm bleeding again. And literally she just looked at me and she was like, I'm so sorry. I was like, we gotta get to the hospital, like I ain't got time for this. We packed up my little suitcase and stuff. Like I knew they was gonna admit me straight away. I just knew it. I was bleeding quite heavily as well. Like I almost imagine pissing blood out of your ass. I'd say that's the kind of level that we're looking at. And I went to the hospital. Boom, fast track me. Literally, you'd think I'm at fucking Fort Park at this point. They'd done their little hemorrhoids test. Like I pretty much just fucking sat there like, oh yeah, here again. Little did I know, this time was gonna shit, excuse the pun, on the fucking last time I was in hospital. Like, but my body was like, bitch, you think you're ready? This time I was there for about 2.5 weeks, so over double the time. I remember they pumped me with steroids straight away again, but this time they gave me some mega steroids. I mean, I thought it was bad then. This time it was just about to get real. So admitted me into hospital a couple of days, colonoscopy. Colonoscopy is always the first thing they do because they want to see how severe it is. And colonoscopy literally has a little camera on the end of it. They go into your intestine, and you can feel this, by the way, like you can fully feel like something going up your bum and around and all this sort of stuff. And it's got like a little grabber on the end as well. And the grabber, what it does is it takes little biopsies. And you can feel this, like I can feel something inside me grabbing inside my intestine. Like I can't even explain that feeling to you. But I'm sedated, so I can't really react to the situation, but I can feel it. So yeah, real shitty experience, excuse the pun again. And then I remember, this is where it got bad. So I was bleeding up to 40 times in one day. I think that's when it got really bad, 40 times in one day. So I was going pretty much every half an hour bleeding to the toilet. And I remember 5 doctors coming in after my colonoscopy. 5. And I thought to myself, usually it's 1, 2, maximum 3, I mean if that. And 5 doctors walked in, and I remember I had a donut in my hand. My friend had got me a donut, and I remember I was eating the donut and they were like, can you put the donut down now please? And I was like, okay, like alright, cool. I was on my own, by the way, and I put the donut to the side and they were like, how are you feeling, Farah? And I was like, oh, I feel alright, like, you know, it's okay. And they were like to me, so we've got your colonoscopy results back. And I was like, okay. And they were like, it's quite severe. And I was like, okay. And I was like, and you were like they were really delicate with the situation. I feel like, you know, they really struggled to sort of tell me what was going on. And, you know, I think one of them like came up to me and was just like, so we've done the biopsies and we've had a look inside your bowel and it's extremely inflamed. And I was like, okay, like I knew that. I'm bleeding 40 times a day. I didn't think it otherwise. And I was like, what does this mean? Like, what are you trying to tell me? And they were like, we fear your bowel could perforate. And I just remember thinking, what? And they were like to me, I'm starting to well up again. They were like to me, yeah, your bowel could perforate and we fear it could be within the next day. And they were like, it's really bad. And I was like, what happens if my bowel perforates? And they were like, it's fatal. And I remember it, he literally looked at me square in the eye and was like, it's fatal, Farah. And I was like, so I could die? And he said, we would do our best to try and save you, but it is a possibility. And I think that's like, I burst out into tears. I remember, and I just looked at him and I thought, no, like, but my bowel could perforate, like, and they were explaining like the lining of my bowel was really bad, and I remember they were like, we might have to perform an emergency surgery on you, but we're gonna wait. And I was like, but why would you wait if you know my bowel could perforate? And they were like, because they basically explained that if they go in and do surgery, there's a chance it could perforate while they're doing the surgery, so they don't want to antagonize it. So it was kind of like the lesser of two evils. It was more like, let's just try and hope that your bowel doesn't perforate, but if it does, then we'll rush you into emergency surgery. And I just thought to myself, I remember like I looked around and I was just like, what's going on? Like, how did I get here? Like, I was fine. I was like, a couple months ago, you know, there was nothing wrong with me, and I'm like, now I've got these 5 doctors standing in front of me, I've got no one around me, and they're basically telling me that I could die. I remember they left. They didn't stay much long after that. They walked out and I just sobbed. I didn't call anyone straight away. I don't know, I just wanted to like gather my thoughts. And I remember like, I remember just being really angry with God. I was just like, why are you doing this to me? Like, what have I done to upset you in this world so much that you need to do this to me? And that whole night, I didn't sleep. That whole night, I was awake. And I remember one of the nurses, I can't remember her name, but I remember she sat with me for like an hour. For me, when I was going through that, like, doctors can be really harsh with you sometimes, and like the nurses are just like these little helpers who are just here to tell you that everything's gonna be fine, and that's what I needed to hear. And I remember she sat with me at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was just crying to her, and I was crying and crying and crying, and she was like, it's gonna be fine. She was like, it's gonna be fine, you're gonna be fine. And she didn't know I was gonna be fine, but she told me I was gonna be fine, and that's what I needed to hear at that moment. And I remember telling my family the next day. I never told anyone that night. And the reason why I didn't tell anyone was because I needed time to digest it. I can't be someone else's shoulder when I needed my own shoulders at that moment in time, and I needed to be strong for myself, so I didn't tell anybody. I told my family the next day that my bowel was really inflamed, but I didn't tell them exactly the severity of the situation. I didn't explain to them that, you know, they basically said to me that tonight could be my last night in this world, because that's basically what they said to me. You know, they said that that one night was really fatal as to how I come back or forward with this. And that was tough. That was really tough. I think having that conversation with my family and friends, it was a lot to take in, because I'm trying to be strong. I hate looking weak. I think one of my biggest thing in life is looking weak. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And that's one of the reasons why I made this video, because I'm proud of where I've come from. I don't think this makes me look weak. I think it makes me look, if anything, so strong. I was in hospital for 2.5 weeks, as mentioned previously, and I was bleeding so much, so much, and it affected me. It affected me a lot. It affected me in ways that I didn't think I'd even thought about, and I was constantly in pain. I was in pain almost every minute of every day. I couldn't sleep. I would always toss and turn, and my stomach was literally just on fire all the time, and you know, I was bleeding from my bowels, and I can't explain the feeling, but all I can try and kind of make you somewhat understand is, imagine if your intestine was like this and someone is doing this, like a Chinese burn. That's what it felt like. Every time I clenched myself together, it was like someone was doing that to get the blood out. And I think that is the only way I can explain it. And every day it was like a colonoscopy. I slowly started to recover, so thank God, obviously my bowel didn't perforate and I didn't have to have any surgery, but they monitored me very closely, and you know, they always checked on me. But again, that was through colonoscopies, which I hated. And a colonoscopy is not actually so bad when you are in remission, because it feels a little bit uncomfortable. It's not really painful at all. When you are inflamed and you have something in there touching the inflammation in your bowels, it just feels like a volcano inside you. It just burns. I can't explain it. I honestly cannot explain it. But it was just so painful. And you know, I think it's opened my eyes to who I am as a person, and it really instilled some reality into my life, and it really installed, you know, who I want in my life and who left my life. And once I left hospital, I was probably just approaching 70 kilos. Bear in mind, before this happened, I was 58 kilos, so I'd put on about 12 kilos, and you could see it. And like the first time when it all happened, it kind of, the steroids kind of like disappeared slowly, but the second time round, not so much. It was the weight sort of stuck, and I think a lot of that was down to me also indulging in really shitty food to make myself feel better, because that's what we do, right? When we feel like shit, we want shit food to somewhat make ourselves feel better. And I wanted the chocolates and the cakes and the crisps. I was like, fuck it, like, I'm half dead anyway. That was literally the mentality I had. I was like, I'm half dead anyway, why would I look after myself? I'm like, I've got this fucking illness anyway, what's the point? I'm like, it's like fucking smoking and getting cancer. You've got cancer, you might as well fucking continue smoking. That was literally how I thought. I was like, I've got this fucking illness, but little did I know that's just not the mentality to have. And I came out of hospital, and you know, it was I was in there for 2.5 weeks, so it was really brutal on my body. I was on bed rest for like 2 months, so I had to stop working. I think one of the great things about that, actually, though, even though I stopped working, I was still doing my uni work, believe it or not. And I think everyone knows this, but that was actually probably one of my most proudest moments. While I was in hospital, they offered me mitigating circumstances. Obviously, I actually declined it because that was something for me to do while I was in hospital. Even though I was nearly dead, I thought, why not continue with my degree? So I remember saying, no, I don't want the mitigating circumstances, I'm still going to complete my year. They were like, oh, I remember them talking to me about taking the year off or doing it next year. I was like, no, I'm fucking completing my uni. As long as I get my coursework done and I get everything done, because it was mainly coursework based, I was like, as long as I get it done, don't chat to me. And yeah, I went on to get a first that year. So that was my second year of uni, and I got a first that year. And then I actually got a first in my overall as well. And that's probably one of my greatest accomplishments. And you know, I think there are so many people, again, you know, who make excuses and things like that. But you know, I say to myself, is not being able to focus really an excuse when I was in a hospital bed, nearly dying, and I managed to get a first? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think, and that's not to say that I'm not being sympathetic with your situation, but I just think it's taught me how strong I am, and I'm one for making excuses, or I was one for making excuses. And you know, I should use myself as an example sometimes, because sometimes I will cry about the most smallest things, and yeah, it might be trivial, and yeah, it might have annoyed me, but you're the girl that fucking was on her deathbed and doing her uni work and got her first. Like, you were that girl. You were that girl that was bleeding out of her bum 30-40 times a day, and you still managed to fucking get up, and you still managed to do the shit that you do today. So that is, it's a message to me, and it's a message to everybody that, you know what, regardless of what you're going through, and whether it be breakups, whether it be boys, whether it be stress, whether it be family, I understand there are some things that are out of your control, but you know what actually is in your control in that situation is your mindset. It is always your mindset. It is how you look at a situation. It is how you deal with a situation. We don't live in a perfect world. We don't, you know, and it would be great to live in a perfect world, but we don't. And you have to understand that trials, tribulations, these are going to come your way. Death, grief, all of these things will come our way. And whether it happens to us or people we know around us, it's always about how you deal with it. Someone close to you could pass away, and you could go and build a memorial for them, build a mosque in their name, and you know, really live through them and help them in the afterlife. Or you could turn to alcohol, and you could drink yourself into an oblivion, and you could also die. Do you see what, like, there are, and this again is mindset, right? Because no one's allowed to say to this person that you're not grieving. That person is grieving. That's why they're doing what they're doing. But if only their mindset and their outlook on life was different, and how they view the situation, would it be able to change and shape the future for that person? And that's more so what I'm getting at. Again, with my illness, I could have continued eating like shit, which I did, might I add. Continue eating like shit till now. I could have used it as every single excuse under the book. No, I don't need to work, I've got this. I could go sit on the dole and get some money and from the government and get a council flat and get a disabled badge and do all this and that. I could do all of those things. I could be that person that could just sit there like a lump I could, but I don't want to be that person. My goal right now is to look the best I've ever looked in my life, and I'm getting there, if not there already. And you know, for me, I don't want age to be a factor. I don't want it to be, oh, you're not in your prime anymore. I'm 26 years old and I'm gonna fucking look better than I did before I had colitis and when I was 21, 20. I can guarantee myself that, obviously with God's will, sorry. I just want people to understand that, yeah, you might have illnesses come your way and certain things come your way in life, but change your mindset, change your outlook, and that will change a lot for you. And you know, that is something that I myself have really struggled with. Mindset, I've really struggled with it. And again, I give a lot of my credit to Cameron. The reason why is because I had a lot of bad days. I still have bad days now where I'm hard on myself or I'm really difficult with myself. And you know what? It's okay. It's okay to be that person, and that's the message that I want to get across from this video. And you are allowed to feel the way you feel, but just open your perspective with the way that you feel, and it's okay to feel the way you feel. You know, I have had colitis. So I was diagnosed in 2016, so it's been 4 years now. Alhamdulillah, for the last year of 2019 till now, I've been in remission. It's been a long journey. It's been a really, really long journey. I stopped taking my medication in 2017. I just went through a really in denial period in my life, and it sucks because it led to me bleeding for 18 months, I believe. 18 months I was bleeding for, so they couldn't control me. I remember earlier I spoke about body becoming immune to steroids. They tried to put me back on steroids, wasn't working, but it wasn't enough to admit me into hospital. So it was like blood and poo, but it was like a really grey area, and my gastroenterologist struggled to get me back into remission, and that was all down to me. Stopped taking my medication, I just didn't want to take it anymore. I think I was around 24 or 23 or 24, something like that, and I was like, no, I don't want to take my medication anymore. I was like, I am good, because I was in remission, and you know, I was like, oh, my body's back to normal now. But again, it's not back to normal. It's always there, it's just inactive. And you know, I thought I was invincible, and I learned the hard way. I was uncontrollably bleeding. I was on steroids pretty much 14 months out of that. I was swollen, I was looking like a puffer fish, I was self-conscious, I was putting on weight. There were so many factors to it, and I wanted answers, and I just wanted to get back to where I was. I was like, oh, if only I would have just taken my medication. And I started to get other issues from that. So I started to have liver issues from all of the medication that they were giving me. My bones started to weaken from all of the steroids they were giving me. So I was constantly in hospital. I remember in December 2018, I had 17 different doctor's appointments in that month. Imagine that, 17 different doctor's appointments. So that means every day or every other day I was in hospital with a different appointment for all the things they were checking for. They thought I had lupus at one point. It was just crazy, and it was meant to be, but I foolishly stopped taking my medication, and that's what led to this whole build up. And you know, I had pretty much 7, 8, 9, 10 different appointments every month for those 18 months, and it was hard on me. It was really, really hard on me because I blamed myself. I blamed myself for stop taking my medication, and it was really, really difficult time for me, and especially and Cameron as well. And you know, I think we were on the brink a lot of the time because I was just like, why are you still with me? Leave me alone, like I'm damaged goods and all this shit. And you know, when really I shouldn't have been looking at life like that, but you always think you're a burden to somebody, and I think that's also something else that, you know, can really affect you. And I think one of the things I've taken away from this whole situation is to be kind. Coming back to the story, they put me on a new treatment, and it was called infliximab at the time, and it was basically where you go to hospital, pretty much like what you guys might have seen on my story recently, where I had a drip attached to me and they drip you medication. Because it's quite a high concentration, you can't take it through tablets, it kind of has to be dripped into you slowly. And I was going there every couple months, and the problem with the medication they were giving me was that it takes about 6 months to kick in, because you need about 3 or 4 doses first before they know. And in this time I'm bleeding, so I'm praying it's working, but it's taking too long. And I remember up to 6 months I was still bleeding, there was nothing. And they trialed me on a new medication, and that was called bendeluzumab, and it was more gut specific. So the infliximab, they actually was able to see that my body was pretty much creating receptors that were blocking the medication. So therefore my body was flushing it out before it was reaching my stomach. And you know, I was again angry. I was like to my doctor, why can't you fix this? Why can't you fix this? What's going on? And they put me on a new medication, and that's actually the new medication that you guys will see me with now, and I've been on it for pretty much a year now. And everything, alhamdulillah, since over a year I've been in remission. Remission just means that it's inactive. And you know, it's been a long journey, guys. You know, I think I'm blessed by Allah, and I feel like Allah taught me something, and what he did was he gave me something that allowed me to continue my life, but at the best of my capability. And that's the best way to put it, because he could have took me out of this world like that, and he does with some people and didn't even know it. I think he humbled me. He humbled me, and he put me back to where I needed to be, and he put me on a different journey. And I don't believe I'd be where I am right now if it wasn't for Allah. Before, I used to be really upset. I used to question him a lot, and it was a lot for me. And you know, I think I even got to the point where I didn't even want to believe in God anymore. And you know, again, it all goes back down to mindset. And for me now, I'd say I'm in the best place I've ever been. 99.9% of the time, I don't even feel my illness. Sometimes I get the odd stomach ache or the odd nag, but who doesn't? And you know, I think I look after myself a lot more now. I take a lot of time out for self-care. I give myself a lot of self-care, and you know, I think that was something I wasn't doing before. I was looking to Instagram to give me self-care, whereas now I share my self-care. And I think that's one of the differences between my old Instagram and my new Instagram. And I don't want to make this conversation about Instagram, you know, I think my life is so beyond that. But I get so many questions till now, oh, why did you delete your old Instagram? And you know, I deleted it because I didn't feel like it was a true reflection of who I was as a person. And I thought it came across very pretentious, and it came across very I just didn't like myself when I looked at myself, and I thought, well, if I don't like the way I look and the way I come across, why would I expect other people to? And although I had followers, it didn't mean shit to me. And you know, now I find myself at a much more content, happier place in my life. And you know, I think my illness, again, like I said, guys, has played such a big part of that. And you know, I thank everyone who sends me lovely messages. Today is actually the day that I was in hospital, and I had got so many great messages from so many people. And you know, I really do thank everyone for reaching out to me. I get more people who I don't know reaching out to me on a daily basis, and it means a lot. It means well, you know. And I thank everyone for being there for me and supporting me on my journey in life. And I've got so much more to give, and I've got so much more to learn, and that's what life is about. And you know, I think for me, one of my biggest changes throughout this whole journey is my mindset and how I look at life. And you know, even if it's just being stuck in traffic and just, you know, knowing that that was meant to be, and this is life. And you know, not everything needs to be a moment or a oh my god moment. You know, sometimes it's just take it as it comes and say alhamdulillah for the things you have, and thank God for the things you have. And if you don't believe in God, then thank the universe for giving it, or karma, or what it is that you believe in. Just allow that to make you a positive person. Allow that to be the driving factor as to why you live the life you live. And that's literally the only message, if you take one thing away from this, that you take away from this. And you know, I understand that everyone's situations are different, but I've been there, I've been through it. I've lost friends, I've lost, you know, I've lost family members, I've been on my deathbed, I've, you know, fucking dropped to the floor and Cameron's had to pick me up, and I've sobbed my whole heart and life out. I know what it feels like, and I've taken pictures of myself from really horrible angles and cried myself and thought, why do I look like this? But God, this is all materialistic, it's all materialistic. And you know, although, like I said, you're allowed to be down and you're allowed to be those things, just remember within your whole heart that, you know, it really is what matters in here. And I know I might sound so cheesy, but really guys, it really does matter about what's in your heart and who you are as a person. And that's what I'd like for everyone to understand about me, is that, you know, I've come a long way on my journey, and if I'm able to help you in any sort of way, shape or form, then I'm happy. If you know anyone who is going through a hard time, or you know anyone who is beating themselves up about it, or if you know anyone who is just really struggling at the moment, redirect them to this video. I hope it makes them feel better. If not, relay some of the information that you have watched and relay that back to them, you know. And it really does make a difference, because the same way I had people who were upholding me and making me a stronger person is the same way I would like to be able to do that for people, even if we don't know each other, even if, you know, it is just through YouTube or Instagram or those kind of things. I want to be able to share my story with everyone. So share this story as much as you can, and I really hope all of you have the most blessed lives. Your health is key. Look after yourselves, make sure you look after your families, make sure you look after your mental health, make sure you look after you before you look after anybody else. And the reason why I say this, guys, is because you need to be the best you can be to be able to spread that positivity. And again, cheesy it might be, but that's the message I want to get across today. If you got to the end, then I really do appreciate you sticking around till the end of this video. I know it's quite a long one, but I really do appreciate it, and I really do hope that you can take something away from this video. Thank you so much for watching my journey, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Until next time, guys.